So hello everybody, this is Professor Tallarico, and I want to make a little video here on Chapter 6. And Chapter 6 is basically concerned with the sources and causes of fluctuations in interest rates and what makes interest rates fluctuate. And we're going to talk about that in about 30 of these slides. And there'll be, we'll look at three factors that explain the risk structure of interest rates, and a couple theories, what makes interest rates vary across different maturity bonds. All right, so bonds with the same maturity have different interest rates, and there's a couple factors, right? If you own a junk bond, otherwise known as a risky bond, like I'm in a junk bond fund, and they call it a high yield fund. And, they're subject to default. So the more risk you take, right, the more return you want, right? So basically that'll affect it. If you can't get rid of a bond and, it's not very liquid, you want more return because you may have trouble getting rid of it. And of course, the tax you're going to pay. If you have tax-free municipals, you'll have a lower return, a coupon, right? Because you're not going to pay a tax. And, that's the way that goes, right? So it's all a function of your tax considerations. And all three of these affect interest rates on a bond. So here's a nice curve from 1920. I was born in 54, so I'm over here somewhere, right? Up till about, I guess, over here, 2000, maybe 14. And, it shows corporate bonds, AAA rated, and maybe risky bonds. And you can see the jump here, right, in a return for the risky bonds. And I guess the dark blue here is the government bonds, so you can see the lower return. And state and local municipals, which are interest-free, tax-free, are lower on pretty much on all costs. Now, over here, there was a huge recession, right? 1980. So you can see interest rates were up. I was trying to buy a house back then, and I couldn't get a house because mortgage rates were huge. Inflation was out of control, kind of. Really not a recession, just huge inflation. And I had a mortgage rate of about 16%. I was getting slammed. So, and then you can see as time went on, and then over here in 2008, there's a spike up again, right, for junk bonds, and you'll notice the spike down for government bonds here. So there was a lot of activity around during the Great Recession. A lot of things were going on at that point. All right, so a default risk is basically, as I mentioned, the probability that the issuer of the bond is unable or unwilling to pay. They'll default, right? And they may not even pay off the face value. Very similar to what happened with Enron. You remember with Enron? And basically, by default, U.S. Treasury bonds are considered the default free, right? Because it's always, the government will always pay. One way or the other, they'll have to raise taxes and do something and pay off, right? And so the risk premium will be the premium between any corporate bond, let's say, and Treasury bonds, right? So that difference will give you the risk premium. All right, so if default risk on corporate bonds, whoops, hold on. I don't want to do that. So we can look at this in a couple steps, right? So here's the price of the bond, right? And here's the quantity of corporate bonds, right? So and if there's an increase in default risk, interest rates are going to go up. So the demand curve for corporate bonds is going to shift to the left, right over here. So if interest rates go up, the price will go down. Remember that? Good. All right. And then step 2, and shifts demand curve for treasury. People will go to safe haven and go to Treasury bonds, right? So the price will go up. right? There'll be a demand, so the price will go up. And that'll raise the price of treasury bonds and lowers the price of corporate bonds. And interest rates will go down on treasury bonds and blah, blah, blah. So you can read all this stuff, and it kind of all makes sense, right? You remember, interest rates and prices of a bond are reciprocal of each other, okay? So this is the corporate bond market here, and this is the treasury bond market. All right, so here's a table. Here's a table of bond ratings, and they do Moody's, the infamous Moody's standards, and Fitch, and somehow a lot of corporate securities were given a AAA rating during the 2008 Great Recession. So they were kind of in cahoots with the banks. So they got a lot of bad press, the rating agencies. But you can see how they rate things, right? They use a little different terminology here. But basically, I consider like junk from this point here, lower medium grade down. Junk bond funds are a good thing to get into because they spread the default risk and you get a pretty decent return. All right, so here we keep going here with this table, and you can see they say speculative at this point, and I mean this is all junk, but I still like. Let me go back one slide. I still kind of consider junk from this point down. I would be skeptical. All right, so, but like I said, you may not be don't be afraid of a junk bond fund if you don't want to deal with stocks, because I'm in both. All right, so August, and as we know, August 2007, I don't know how old some of you are, but the subprime mortgage market collapsed, and people were worried about the financial health of corporations. So default risk for bonds made them less desirable at any given price. So basically, people were afraid to buy bonds in corporations, and no one knew where to put their money. I remember that. Stock market was crashing. Bonds were going berserk. You couldn't get commercial paper. So people had just kept their money in cash in the bank and got, I guess, 1% or whatever. All right. So liquidity, again, is the relative ease with which an asset can be converted. Or, if you can sell your bond pretty quick, you're going to get a less of a coupon interest rate, right? So if you can sell that, if it's not liquid, you're going to demand more. And as I said on municipal bonds, right, you're going to get a lower coupon because interest payments are exempt from taxes. Sometimes they're triple tax-free, right? All right, so here's municipal and treasury bonds. So here's the municipal bonds market, and here's the treasury bonds. And tax-free status shifts the demand for municipal bonds to the right, right? So basically, it goes this way. The price goes up because the interest rate goes down, right? Cheaper bonds. And basically the demand for treasuries will go to the left. Prices go down, and so interest rates will go up. So again, it has that reciprocal effect, okay? All right, so way back in 2013, 5 years ago, Congress approved this legislation that Obama was big on to increase the income tax rate on high income tax, but he increased the tax rate to 39%. Basically, it lowered the interest rates on municipal bonds relative to the interest rate on treasury bonds, right? Because the interest, basically, you're going to pay, basically, the demand for municipals went up, so the price went up, so the interest municipals went down, and interest on treasuries went up. All right, so I'm about 10 minutes in. I will stop here, and I'll pick up next time. Okay, thank you. See you later.